My name is Daisy Monroe. I'm 28 years old. I sat at the table for my 28th birthday, surrounded by polished silverware and the same fake smiles I'd seen my whole life. My parents, Daniel and Elaine, sat across from me. My sister, Lily, was right beside them, looking perfect as always. My grandfather, Arthur, stood up. He was the only one who ever really looked at me. He lifted his glass. "A toast to Daisy," he said, his voice proud. "I'm so happy to see the woman you've become. Tell us, dear, what wonderful things have you been doing with that $3 million trust fund I left you?" The room went completely silent. I could feel my parents freeze. I looked at my grandfather, confused. "Grandpa," I whispered, my voice shaking, "what are you talking about? I never received a trust fund." He didn't argue. He just smiled sadly and dropped a thick stack of bank statements onto the center of the table. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew one thing. Someone at that table knew exactly what those papers meant, and they were about to be exposed. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Daisy Monroe. For as long as I can remember, I learned one simple rule: shrink yourself. Growing up in our clean, quiet house, there was only enough air in the rooms for one child. That child was my sister, Lily. Lily was bright and loud. She was the one who danced in the living room, and my parents, Elaine and Daniel, would clap. I was the one who sat on the stairs, watching. Lily was the painting, and I was the wall she hung on. My parents didn't dislike me. They just didn't see me. When we started school, Lily got new backpacks with popular cartoon characters. I got a plain blue one. "It's more practical, Daisy," my mother would say. "It will last." Lily took ballet, then tennis, then piano. My parents paid for every lesson, every outfit, every recital. When I asked about guitar lessons, my father sighed. "Daisy, that's just a lot of noise. Why don't you focus on your schoolwork? You're so good at being quiet and studious." So I studied. I learned to be invisible. I learned that asking for things only led to disappointment. When it was time for college, the difference became impossible to ignore. Lily, who was a year older, was sent to a private university 3 states away. My parents co-signed the loans, paid for her beautiful dorm room, and sent her money every single week. "Lily just needs the full experience," my mom, Elaine, explained. "She needs to be able to focus on her studies and her social life. It's important." A year later, it was my turn. I got into a good state school. "You're so smart, Daisy," my dad, Daniel, said, patting me on the shoulder. "You'll get scholarships. You'll be just fine." The scholarships came, but they didn't cover everything. They didn't cover books. They didn't cover food. They didn't cover the drafty apartment I had to share with 2 other girls. So I got a job. Then I got a second job. My life became a blur of classes, stacking books at the university library and serving coffee at a diner until 2 a.m. I was always tired. My bones ached. I remember one night, sophomore year, I was down to my last $4. I hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. My textbook for my midterm was $120. I had to choose. I bought the book. I drank water for dinner. That same night, I saw a picture Lily posted online. She was at a fancy restaurant with her sorority sisters, holding up a glass of wine. My parents had commented on it. "Looks beautiful, honey. Have fun. We sent you a little extra for that dress you wanted." I sat on my cold apartment floor, my stomach cramping from hunger, and I just stared at the picture. I didn't feel angry. I just felt empty. I felt stupid. What is wrong with me? I thought. Why is it so easy for her and so hard for me? I tried to talk to my mom about it. I called her one afternoon, my hands shaking because I hated asking for help. "Mom," I started, I'm really struggling. My job at the diner cut my hours and I'm not sure I can make rent this month." There was a long, heavy sigh on the other end of the line. "Daisy, you're 20 years old. You have to learn to budget. We can't just bail you out every time you mismanage your money. This is what building character is all about. Your father and I had to work for everything we had." I flinched. "I am working. I have 2 jobs." You're just being too sensitive," she cut me off. Her voice was sharp, disappointed. "You always do this. You get overwhelmed and you think the world is ending. Lily never calls us with these problems. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet." I hung up the phone. I felt ashamed. She was right. I was too sensitive. I was weak. Lily was strong. I needed to be more like Lily. So I found a third job, tutoring freshmen. I stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night. I ate instant noodles and told myself it was fine. I bought a car for $500 so I could get to my tutoring job. It was a 15-year-old rust bucket. The heater was broken and the engine made a terrible sound. But it was mine. I had paid for it. I was building character. I was standing on my own 2 feet. I kept going to family events. I smiled at birthdays. I brought side dishes to Thanksgiving. I listened to my parents praise Lily for her great new internship, which my dad had gotten for her. I listened to them talk about the new furniture they bought for Lily's apartment. And every time, I just shrank a little more. I made myself smaller. I told myself that their love was a limited resource and Lily just happened to need all of it. I told myself I was fine. I was a very, very good liar. The years after college were just more of the same. The only difference was that the stakes were higher. I finished school with decent grades and a mountain of student debt. I moved into a tiny, rundown studio apartment. I found a job as an administrative assistant at a small company. It didn't pay much, but it paid the bills. Mostly. The flashbacks, when I look back now, are so sharp they still cut. The first one was about rent. My roommate in college had been flaky, but my first adult roommate was worse. She left in the middle of the night, sticking me with the entire $1,400 rent. I was short $700. I was 23. I was terrified of being evicted. I called my dad Daniel. My voice was small. Dad, I'm in a terrible bind. My roommate left. I'm $700 short for rent. I get paid next week, but it's due on the 1st. Can you please just lend it to me? I will pay you back on Friday, I promise. I could hear him sigh, that same sound of deep disappointment. Daisy, 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 when are you going to learn? This is what I'm talking about. You can't rely on other people, you have to have an emergency fund. What if we weren't here? You'd be on the street. This is just poor planning. It wasn't my fault, I said, my voice rising. I hated how desperate I sounded. She just left. It's your name on the lease, he said, his voice hard. It's your responsibility. A loan? No, we're not a bank, Daisy. You need to figure this out. This is the real world. He hung up. I sat on my floor and cried for an hour. Then I dried my tears, found my nicest blouse, and took it to a pawn shop. I pawned my grandmother's locket. I got $150. I sold my textbooks back to the college store. I took an advance on my paycheck, which my boss warned me was a one-time thing. I made the rent. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for 2 weeks. 2 days later, I was on the phone with my mom, a forced Sunday call. She was talking about Lily. Oh, it's so exciting, Elaine said, her voice bright. Lily found the most wonderful apartment in New York. It's a little small, but the location is perfect. Your father and I are just going to fund it for the first year so she can focus on her art. I held the phone. I couldn't breathe. Fund it? Yes, just pay her rent and utilities. You know how expensive New York is. She's so brave to follow her dream. We just want to make sure she's safe and comfortable. I said nothing. The blood was pounding in my ears. Daisy, are you there? She asked. I'm here, Mom, I said. My voice was flat. That's great for Lily. Then there was the car breakdown. I was still driving that $500 rust bucket. I was on the highway, driving home from work in the pouring rain. It was dark. The car made a loud thunk. Then a terrible grinding sound, then nothing. Smoke started pouring from the hood. I steered it to the shoulder, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. Cars were flying past me, soaking me in spray. I called my parents, sobbing. I'm on the highway, the car. It's broken, it's smoking. I don't know what to do, can you come get me? Oh, for heaven's sake, Daisy, my mom snapped. You and that car, we told you this would happen. This is exactly what happens when you buy cheap things. We're an hour away. We're in the middle of dinner. Call a tow truck. I don't think I have enough money for a tow truck, I whispered. They're so expensive. Then I guess you'd better figure something out, she said, and the line went dead. I sat there in the cold and the dark for 20 minutes. I was completely, utterly alone. They hadn't even asked if I was safe. Finally, I made the only call I could. Grandpa, I said, my voice breaking. Daisy, where are you? You sound awful. I'm on the side of the 95, my car, it broke down, it's raining. I'm on my way, he said, no questions. No blame, put your hazard lights on, lock your doors, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He was there in 15. He drove me home, paid the tow truck driver, and made me a cup of tea. He didn't say a word about my parents. He just sat with me while I shivered. You work hard, Daisy, he said, his voice quiet. You work too hard. He was the only one who saw me. I kept going to family events. I kept trying. I thought if I just showed up enough, If I was just quiet enough and easy enough, maybe something would change. I would show up for Christmas late, because I had to work the holiday shift at my second job as a receptionist. I'd walk in, smelling like office coffee, and no one would even look up. "You're late," my mother would say, handing me a plate of cold food. "We already ate." I'd sit at the table, listening to Lily tell a story about her ski trip. My father would be laughing, hanging on her every word. I was there, but I wasn't. I was just a ghost at their table. But I never missed a dinner. I never missed a holiday. I kept hoping that one day they would finally see me. That day never came. The car ride home from my 28th birthday dinner was silent, but it was a loud silence. It was the loudest silence I had ever known. My parents sat in the front seat, stiff as boards. I sat in the back. The stack of bank statements my grandfather had dropped on the table was sitting on the console. Neither of my parents had touched it. I was numb. $3 million. Trust fund. The words just bounced around in my head. They didn't make sense. Finally, my mother, Elaine, spoke. Her voice was thin, stretched tight. "That was quite a performance," she said to the windshield. "Your grandfather is really starting to lose it." "It's sad." My father gripped the steering wheel. "He had no right," Daniel spat. "No right at all to say that, in public, to embarrass us." "To embarrass you," he said, looking at me in the rearview mirror. They weren't denying it. They were just angry he had said it. A small, cold feeling started in my stomach. "Is he confused, Mom?" I asked. My voice was quiet. "Is there a trust fund?" My mother turned around. Her face was a mask of anger. "Don't be ridiculous, Daisy. Of course not. A $3 million trust fund. Do we look like people who have that kind of money? You know our finances. We've worked for everything we have." The lie was so fast, so sharp. "He's just an old man," my father said. "He's trying to cause trouble. Forget about it. We're going to forget about it." But I couldn't forget. I couldn't forget the look on my grandfather's face. It wasn't confusion. It was victory. And I couldn't forget the papers. We got to my apartment. I got out of the car. "We'll talk tomorrow, Daisy," my mom said. It wasn't a request, it was an order. "We're a family. We'll handle your grandfather's episode together." I just nodded and went inside. I didn't sleep. I sat on my sofa in the dark. The numbers didn't add up. If there was no trust fund, why did Grandpa have bank statements? If there was no trust fund, why did my parents look so terrified? $3 million. I thought about my $500 car. I thought about the $700 rent I couldn't pay. I thought about the nights I ate instant noodles and told myself I was building character. My phone rang at 1 a.m. It was Grandpa Arthur. "Daisy," his voice was clear and strong, not confused at all. "Grandpa," I whispered. "What is going on?" "My parents, they said you were confused." There was a long pause. "No, Daisy," he said, and his voice was hard like cold steel. "I am not confused. I've suspected something for months. I needed to see their faces when I said it. Now I know." "Know what?" "I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning," he said. 10 a.m. at the old building downtown. Okay. Should I tell Mom and Dad?" "No," he said, his voice sharp. "Do not tell your parents. Do not tell Lily. Do not tell anyone. Just come and come alone." He hung up. The panic set in. My body was shaking. Part of me, the part that had been trained for 28 years, was screaming, "This is wrong. You are causing trouble. You are hurting the family." My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "We need to talk. Now. Your grandfather is trying to drive a wedge between us." Another one, my dad. "Answer your phone, Daisy. We are a united front. Don't let him poison you." Another one. Lily. "Hey, that was super weird tonight. Mom is losing her mind." What's going on? They were panicking. They were closing ranks. And for the first time in my entire life, I was on the outside. I did something I had never done before. I turned my phone off. The next morning, I felt sick. I walked to his office building. Every step felt like I was walking through wet cement. I was betraying them. I was the bad daughter. But I kept walking. I kept thinking about the rain on the highway. I kept thinking about my empty stomach. I kept thinking, $3 million. I got to his office. I was shaking. I was ready to apologize, to say it was all a mistake. But the look on my grandfather's face stopped me. He was not angry. He was sad. "Grandpa," I started. "Daisy," he said, "I'm so sorry." And that's when I knew my life was about to break in two. My grandfather's office was on the top floor. It smelled like old books, cedar wood, and coffee. It was warm. It felt safe. A man in a gray suit was standing by the window. Daisy, my grandfather said, this is Mr. Harrison. He's my lawyer. He's also been our family's accountant for 40 years. Please sit down. I sat. My hands were folded in my lap, squeezing each other so hard my knuckles were white. Grandpa, I don't understand, I whispered. Am I crazy? Did I dream that? Mom and Dad said. You are not crazy, Daisy, Grandpa said. He sat across from me and pushed a thick, heavy, spiral-bound book across the desk. It was an inch thick. The cover was simple white. It just said, The Daisy Monroe Trust Fund Audit. 1997-2025. I couldn't touch it. I just stared at it. It was real, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Grandpa said, his voice full of sorrow. Your grandmother and I set it up for you the year you were born. We put $3 million into it. It was meant to be yours and yours alone. You were supposed to get full access on your 18th birthday. 18. The word hit me like a stone. On my 18th birthday, I was working a double shift at the diner to save up for my first community college textbook. My parents had given me a card with $20 in it. I was 18, I said, my voice hollow. That was 10 years ago. I was working at the diner. I was trying to save for school. I know, Grandpa said. Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, spoke. His voice was kind but firm. Daisy, your parents, Daniel and Elaine, were named as the trustees. Their job was to manage the money for you until you turned 18. On that day, their legal authority over the account was supposed to end. They were required to hand it all over to you. He paused, and the silence in the room was heavy. They didn't, he said. Instead, they kept the account hidden from you, and they started spending it. He opened the thick book. It was full of bank statements, column after column of numbers. We pulled every statement, Mr. Harrison said, for all 25 years. He pointed to a page from 10 years ago. Here, a withdrawal for $50,000. The memo line says, Home Renovation Kitchen. I remembered that kitchen, the new granite countertops, the stainless steel appliances. My mother had been so proud. She told everyone they had saved for a decade to get it. They used my money, Mr. Harrison turned the page. And here, recurring payments starting 8 years ago. Lily Monroe University tuition. Lily Monroe sorority dues. Lily Monroe NYC apartment lease. I stopped breathing. The $700 for my rent. My dad's voice. We're not a bank, Daisy. They told me, I whispered. They told me they couldn't help me with my rent. They had my money. And they were using my money to pay for Lily's apartment. Yes, Mr. Harrison said. He turned the page again and again. They paid off their entire mortgage with this trust, Daisy. $300,000. Vacations. Here's $15,000 for a trip to Italy. A new car, $45,000. Luxury purchases, a Rolex watch for your father, a diamond necklace for your mother. It went on, page after page. My entire life, all my struggles laid out next to their spending. I felt sick, I felt cold. How, I whispered. How could they sign the papers? Mr. Harrison turned to the last page of a statement. He pointed to the bottom. 2 signatures were required for every single withdrawal, he said. There they were, in clear black ink. Elaine Monroe, Daniel Monroe, on every page, every theft, every vacation. Every time they told me no. It all crashed down on me, all the shame, all the guilt, all the years I spent thinking I was the problem, that I was weak, that I was too sensitive. It was all a lie. I didn't struggle by accident, I said, the words coming out of my mouth before I could stop them. I looked at my grandfather. His eyes were closed. I didn't build character, I said, my voice getting stronger. I wasn't weak. I struggled because they made me struggle. They stole from me, every single day. They watched me skip meals. They let me drive a car that almost killed me. They let me cry and beg for help, and they told me I was pathetic, while they were spending my money. I put my hand on the audit. It was cold and hard. They are thieves, I said. My parents are thieves. The silence in my grandfather's cedar-scented office was a living thing. It was heavier than the thick audit book sitting on the desk between us. I had been sitting there for what felt like an hour, just staring at one line item from the audit. April 22, 2017, withdrawal $1,200. Memo, Lily's Salon and Spa package. My mind flashed back, not as a vague memory, but with the sharp, cold clarity of a trauma. I was 23. I was on the side of the Iminus 95. The rain was so heavy it felt solid, and the sound of the trucks roaring past was like a physical blow. I was soaked. My hands were so cold I couldn't feel them. I was sobbing into my cheap, dying cell phone. Mom, please, I had begged. It's so dark, I'm scared. Can you just come get me? Her voice had been so cold, so annoyed. Oh, for heaven's sake, Daisy, you and that car. We told you this would happen. This is exactly what happens when you buy cheap things. We're an hour away. We're in the middle of dinner. Call a tow truck. I don't think I have enough money for a tow truck, I'd whispered. They're so expensive. Then I guess you'd better figure something out, she'd snapped and hung up. I sat there in the dark, in the cold, utterly alone. I had genuinely believed in that moment that I was worthless, that I was a burden, that my own mother would not drive an hour to save me. And now, looking at this piece of paper, I knew why. She was busy. She was busy finalizing the payment for my sister to get a massage and a facial. A spa day, I whispered. My voice was hoarse. I couldn't seem to get enough air into my lungs. She left me on the side of the road for a spa day. My grandfather's face was a mask of grief. He reached across the desk, but he didn't touch me. He knew I was somewhere else. Daisy, he said, his voice thick with a pain that mirrored my own. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I should have known. I should have checked. This is my fault. Why didn't you? I asked. The question wasn't an accusation. It was a genuine, hollow, childlike plea. Why did you let them? You were the only one who saw me. Why didn't you see this? He looked down at his hands. They were old, spotted hands, but they were strong. Because they were your parents, he said, and the shame in his voice was devastating. I am your grandfather. They were the trustees. I trusted them. Your grandmother, God rest her soul, she made me promise to look after you. She adored you. She said, Arthur, that little one Daisy, she's quiet, just like me. The world is going to try and roll right over her. You make sure it doesn't. And I let her down. I let you down. It is the single greatest failure of my life. He explained everything then. How he had set up similar, smaller trusts for all his grandchildren, but mine was different. It was the largest. It was from my grandmother's personal inheritance, money from her family, specifically earmarked for me. He told me how he had only started to suspect something was wrong 6 months ago. He'd been reviewing his own estate planning, just a routine checkup. He'd asked Mr. Harrison for a simple overview of all the family trusts. Lily's was normal. My cousins were normal. Mine was almost empty. When I first saw the balance, Daisy, Grandpa said, his hands clenching into fists on the desk, I thought it was a bank error. I truly did. Then my second thought was, I thought you'd invested it. I thought you'd bought a house or started a business. I was proud. He let out a bitter laugh. I thought, look at Daisy, standing on her own 2 feet, just like they always said. She's been so quiet and smart with her money. So I called you, he continued. Do you remember that call? A few months ago, I asked you how your investments were doing, how your portfolio was. I remembered it. I was at my desk, eating a container of lukewarm noodles. I thought he was just making small talk, trying to connect with me. I had laughed. I don't have any investments, Grandpa. I barely have a savings account. I'm just trying to make it to the next paycheck. His face hardened as he relived the memory. That, he said, his voice like iron, is when I hung up, and that is when I hired the auditors. I told them to find every penny. It took them 3 months to find every receipt, every signature, every text message, every lie. I looked at the book. It wasn't just an audit. It was a 25-year-long biography of a crime. My whole life was a lie, my entire identity, the invisible daughter. The sensitive one, the poor planner, the girl who just wasn't as strong as Lily. It was all a carefully constructed story. It was a narrative they had to build, day after day, lie after lie, so they could justify stealing from me. They had to make me small so they could feel big. They had to make me weak so I would never have the strength to question them. They had to make me feel worthless so I would never, ever believe I was worth $3 million. It wasn't just neglect. It was an act of profound, meticulous psychological cruelty. What do we do? I finally asked. My voice was hoarse. My throat felt raw. Grandpa leaned forward. His eyes were clear, the grief replaced by a cold resolve. That is entirely up to you, Daisy. This is your life. This is your money. Your grandmother left it for you. We have 2 options. Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, who had been standing silently by the window, spoke for the first time. His voice was kind but firm, clinical. Option 1, we can let it go. We quietly freeze the account. We transfer the remaining assets, about $200,000 to you. We never speak of it again. Your parents will never be held accountable, but you will be free. It will be quiet. You can take the money and disappear. Let it go. My body screamed at me to take that option. The part of me that had been trained for 28 years to shrink, to avoid conflict, to be the good daughter, begged me to take the easy way out. Just go, just be quiet. Don't make a scene. Don't break the family. Don't be dramatic. My mother's voice was ringing in my head. You are so dramatic, Daisy. You're always causing problems. Why can't you just be easy? My father's voice, softer, but just as damaging. Just be easy, Daisy. Why can't you just be easy like your sister? I felt the old shame rising. The familiar burn in my cheeks. The urge to apologize for being a problem. I almost did it. I almost said, Option 1, please, I just want to go. Then I looked at the audit again. I saw the $700. I saw the $700 I had begged my father for, the money he told me I didn't deserve because I had poor planning. I looked at the line item right below it. That same month, they had spent $5,000. Memo. Vacation Hawaii. I thought of every skipped meal, every 2 a.m. shift, every single time I had sat in my car and cried because I was so tired I couldn't feel my hands. Every holiday I showed up late, feeling like a failure, apologizing for being late, while they sat around a table I had paid for, in a house I had paid for, eating food I had paid for. The shame was still there. It was a burning, physical thing in my chest. But suddenly I realized it wasn't mine, it was theirs. What is option 2? I asked. My voice was steady. It was a new voice. I didn't recognize it. Grandpa looked at me. A small, proud smile just barely touched his lips. Mr. Harrison said, Option 2, we confront them. Legally, we present the audit. We demand a full repayment of every cent they stole. We can press criminal charges for fraud, theft, and embezzlement. We can take them to civil court. We can expose them. Expose them. Send my parents to jail. I thought about it. I thought about them in a courtroom. I thought about them in a prison cell. My stomach turned. I couldn't do that. I wasn't a monster. I can't send them to prison, I whispered. They're still my parents. I understand that, Mr. Harrison said gently. But there is a middle ground. We don't have to press charges. We can arrange a private confrontation. We can revoke their authority, seize what's left, and demand a full financial reckoning. We can make them face what they did. Without a judge, just in a room with you. I looked at Grandpa. He was waiting. He was letting me be the one in charge. I thought about being quiet. I thought about taking the $200,000 and just vanishing. But I knew if I did that, they would win. They would keep their house. They would keep their reputations. They would keep the story they had built. They would tell everyone I was a troubled girl who had run away. They would remain the victims. And I would spend the rest of my life haunted, looking over my shoulder, still that scared girl on the highway. Being quiet was what they had trained me to do. Being quiet was the poison. I closed my eyes. I saw myself at 23 in the rain. Cold, alone, and terrified. Believing I was worthless, I opened my eyes. I don't want to go to court, I said. The legal system was too much. I didn't want a public fight. But I will not be quiet. I looked at my grandfather. I choose myself. For the first time in my entire life, I am choosing myself. What does that look like, Daisy? He asked, his voice soft. I took a deep breath. The coldness wasn't in my stomach anymore. It was in my spine. It was steel. I want a meeting. I want them in a room. I want her in the room. Lily, too. I want her to know who she was living off of. I want her to know that her perfect life was a lie. I pointed at the audit. I want every record. I want a copy of this. I want to look at them while Mr. Harrison reads every single date, every single dollar. Every time they chose her over me. Every time they chose themselves over me. I stood up. I hadn't realized I was shaking. Now I was perfectly still. And I want to be in the room when you take it all back. The meeting was set for the next day at 11 a.m. We didn't give them time to coordinate. We didn't give them time to build their new set of lies. Grandpa Arthur sent a single, joint text to my parents and Lily. There is a serious matter to discuss regarding my estate. Be at this address at 11 a.m. Do not be late. Mr. Harrison will be there. The use of his lawyer's name, I knew, was the hook. It would terrify them. Grandpa's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, booked a private conference room at a neutral office building downtown. It was a horrible, soulless gray room. The carpet was a flat, industrial gray. The walls were a paler, sicker gray. The long, dark wood table was so polished you could see your reflection in it. It felt like a coffin. There was a pitcher of lukewarm water in the middle with 6 glasses. No one ever touched it. I got there first with Grandpa and Mr. Harrison. I was wearing a simple black dress. I felt like I was at a funeral. Maybe I was. Mr. Harrison placed two thick, identical copies of the audit on the table. They landed with a heavy, final thud that echoed in the quiet room. I was numb. I felt like I was floating, watching a movie of my own life. I chose the seat opposite the door. I wanted to see their faces when they walked in. "You don't have to say a word, Daisy," Grandpa said. He put his hand on my shoulder. His hand was warm. "We will handle this." "I know," I said. My voice was a whisper, "but I think I will." The door opened at 11:02 a.m. My parents, Elaine and Daniel, walked in first. My mother, Elaine, was in full armor. Her hair was perfect. She was wearing a string of pearls. She was defensive, her chin held high, as if she was entering a restaurant that had messed up her reservation. She looked around the room with pure disgust. "Arthur, this is absolutely ridiculous," she said, her voice sharp and loud. "Forcing us into some corporate meeting room. What is this, an intervention, if this is about your will?" My father, Daniel, was the opposite. He was anxious. He wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't look at Grandpa. He just stared at Mr. Harrison, his face pale and sweaty. He was trying to smile, that old, placating "I'm a good guy" smile, but it just looked like a grimace. He knew. He knew this wasn't about a will. Then Lily walked in. Lily was just confused. She looked beautiful as always, her hair shiny, her clothes expensive. But her face was pinched with worry. "Grandpa, Daisy, what's going on? Mom, why is Mr. Harrison here? Did something happen? Is Grandpa sick?" "Sit down, all of you," Grandpa said. His voice was not the warm, kind voice I knew. It was the voice of a CEO. It was the voice of a man who was done. The command was so absolute that they all obeyed. They sat. My parents sat on one side together, a united front. Lily sat next to them, looking back and forth between us, her confusion growing. I just watched them. I saw them for the first time, not as my parents, not as my sister, but as the people who had hurt me. Mr. Harrison did not say hello. He sat at the head of the table. "We are here today," he began, his voice flat and clinical, "to discuss the audit of the Daisy Monroe Trust Fund." My mother scoffed, a loud, barking laugh. "Oh, this again? Arthur, I told you, you're confused. There is no—" "Elaine," Mr. Harrison said, his voice cutting through her like a knife. He slid one of the thick binders across the table. It spun and stopped perfectly in front of her. "Do not speak, you will listen." My mother's mouth snapped shut, her face flushed red. I had never in my life seen anyone speak to her that way. For the next 30 minutes, Mr. Harrison read. He did not read a summary. He did not generalize, he read the details. Line by line. "On June 10, 2008, he said, his voice a relentless monotone, a withdrawal of $50,000. Memo, kitchen renovation. Signed, Elaine Monroe and Daniel Monroe." My mother flinched as if she'd been struck. My father sank lower in his chair, his eyes fixed on the table. "On September 1, 2012, he continued, "a transfer of $3,500. Memo, Lily Monroe, sorority dues. Signed, Elaine Monroe and Daniel Monroe." Lily's head whipped around. "What, Mom? What is he talking about? You told me you and Dad paid for that." "He's lying," Elaine snapped, her eyes wide and panicked. This is context. He's taking things out of context. It's complicated." "I am not," Mr. Harrison said. He turned a page. "On October 14, 2015, a withdrawal of $45,000. Memo. New vehicle, Daniel Monroe. Signed, Elaine Monroe and Daniel Monroe." My father, who had been silent, finally spoke. It was a family car," he mumbled, his voice desperate. "It was for family expenses. We all used it." "Did you all use," Mr. Harrison said, not looking up from the page, "the $12,000 withdrawn on April 22, 2017. Memo, Rolex watch D. Monroe?" My father's face went from white to a sickly green. Lily was starting to understand. Her eyes were wide. She was looking at the audit, then at our parents, then at me. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "My apartment. My New York apartment. You said you saved for that. You said it was a gift." "We did, honey," Elaine said, reaching for her hand. It was from all of us. It was family money." "No," I said. It was the first time I had spoken. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a razor. Everyone looked at me. I slid my own copy of the audit across the table toward Lily. "Page 78, I said. "It's all there, Lily. Every rent check, every utility bill, for 3 years. It was all from my trust fund." Lily pulled her hand away from our mother as if she had been burned. She looked at the page, and I watched my sister's face crumble. I watched her realize that her perfect, beautiful, talented life had been bought and paid for with my stolen one. She started to cry, silent, horrified tears, her hand over her mouth. "You!" my mother shrieked, pointing at me. The mask was gone. The pearls and the perfect hair meant nothing. Her face was twisted in pure, ugly rage. "You did this. You are tearing this family apart, after everything we've done for you." "What have you done for me?" I asked. My voice was calm. It was so calm it scared me. "What exactly have you ever done for me?" "We raised you," she yelled. "We gave you a home. This is just paperwork. This is a misunderstanding. It was family money. It was for the family. We were managing it. We were protecting it." "You were stealing," Grandpa said, his voice a low growl. "It was context," my father pleaded, finally looking at Grandpa, his eyes begging. "Arthur, you have to understand the context. She was always so difficult. She was a hard child. She didn't need the things Lily needed. She's an artist. She's sensitive. She needed support. We were just balancing things out." "Balancing things," I said. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. The numbness was gone, replaced by a cold, clear fire. "Balancing things," I repeated, walking to the end of the table. "Okay. Let's talk about context, Dad." I looked him right in the eye. He flinched. "I was 23. My roommate left. I was $700 short on my rent. I called you. I begged you for a loan. I told you I would be evicted. I told you I was scared. Do you remember what you told me?" He stared at me, his mouth open, speechless. "You told me I had poor planning. You told me you weren't a bank. You told me I was irresponsible. You told me to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. You hung up on me." I pointed to the audit. "That same week, you two were in Hawaii, on my money. You spent $5,000 on hotels and dinners. But you couldn't lend me $700 of my own money to keep me from being homeless." My mother started to speak. "Daisy, that's not fair. You don't know the pressure we were under." "I'm not done," I said, and my voice was so cold it silenced her. "The car breakdown. I was on the highway, in the pouring rain. I called you, Mom. I was terrified. I thought I was going to be hit by a truck. You told me I was being dramatic. You told me I was irresponsible for buying a cheap car. You told me to call a tow truck. You hung up." I looked at her, my face hard. "You know what I found out yesterday? The very next day, you used my money to buy Lily a $1,200 spa package. While I was at home, shivering, trying to figure out how to pay the tow truck bill that Grandpa had to cover for me." Lily let out a sob. "Oh God, Daisy, I didn't know. I didn't know." My mother's face was white. "You didn't just steal my money," I said, my voice shaking now, not with weakness but with 28 years of suppressed rage. "You let me suffer. You watched me struggle. You watched me skip meals and work 3 jobs. You watched me cry. You made me feel like I was crazy. You made me feel like I was worthless. You made me feel like I was nothing." I leaned across the table, my hands flat on the polished wood. "When I begged you for help, you made me feel ashamed, while you were using my money to pay for your vacations. You stole my life from me, and you sat there and watched me starve." The room was silent. There was no defense. There was no excuse. There was only the truth hanging in the air like poison. My father put his head in his hands and started to make a horrible, quiet, weeping sound. My mother just stared at me, and in her eyes I saw it. No remorse, no apology, just pure, absolute hatred. She wasn't sorry, she was just angry that she had been caught. The silence in that gray room was absolute. It stretched for a full minute. The only sound was Lily's quiet, broken sobbing into her hands, and the awful, keening sound my father was making. My mother, Elaine, just stared at me. Her face was a frozen mask of hatred. Grandpa Arthur stood up. He had been sitting as the judge, the silent witness. Now he was the executioner. "Elaine, Daniel," he said. His voice was final. It was the voice that had built an empire. "Your authority as trustees of the Daisy Monroe Trust Fund and any and all of my family's financial accounts is revoked. Effective immediately." Mr. Harrison, who had been quiet, slid a new set of documents to the center of the table. They were clean and simple, not an audit. A verdict. "These papers legally transfer all remaining assets and all financial control of the trust solely to Daisy," Mr. Harrison explained, his voice crisp. "The bank is waiting for this signature. The moment it is signed, your names will be permanently removed. All your access, all your privileges, all your control will be terminated." My father looked up. His face was a mess of tears and panic. "Arthur, no, please, you can't. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. We can pay it back, we can." We can fix this, we'll sell the house, we'll get jobs. How? Grandpa asked, his voice cold and flat. How can you pay back $2.8 million? How can you pay back the 25 years you stole from your daughter? How can you fix that, Daniel? My mother, Elaine, finally broke. The hatred shattered and pure, raw panic took its place. She was no longer a mother. She was no longer a wife. She was just a cornered animal. She looked at me. Her hands were trembling so badly she had to clasp them on the table. Daisy, she whispered. Her voice was cracked and unrecognizable. Daisy, please, you don't understand. You don't understand our finances. The house, this will ruin us. She was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of fear. They were tears for herself. We used the house, she stammered, looking at my father, who was just staring at the table, hollowed out. We took out a second mortgage. Years ago, we used the trust as collateral. We told the bank. We told them it was our asset. If you take what's left, the bank will call the loan. We will have nothing. She was choking on the words. They will take the house. We will be ruined. We will be homeless. Ruin, homeless. The words hung in the air. She was telling me that they would be homeless, that they would have no money, that they would have to start from zero in their late 50s. She was telling me, without knowing it, that they would have to live my life. I looked at her. I looked at this woman who had made me feel like garbage every single day of my life. I looked at this woman who had hung up on me while I was stranded in the rain. I looked at her, trembling and begging and broken, and I felt nothing. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel revenge. I just felt the cold, hard floor of my college apartment. I felt the cramping hunger in my stomach. I felt the sting of the rain on the highway. I felt the burning, crawling shame of begging my father for $700. I felt the exhaustion in my bones from working 3 jobs. This wasn't revenge. This was just consequences. This was just gravity. I reached out and pulled the stack of papers toward me. I picked up the pen. It was a heavy, black, expensive pen. My mother saw me. Her eyes went wide. The begging was over. Daisy, no, she shrieked, lurching forward. No, please, I'm your mother. I am your mother. You can't do this. You will destroy us. You will destroy this family. I looked at her. My hand was steady. The pen was cool against my skin. Then maybe you shouldn't have built your lives on money that wasn't yours, I said. My signature was clear and strong. Daisy Monroe. It was the first time in my life my name had ever felt real. It wasn't a request. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. It was an ending. I pushed the papers back to Mr. Harrison. It's done, he said. He picked up his phone, tapped the screen, and sent a text message. The bank has been notified. The transfer is complete. Daniel and Elaine, your access is gone. My mother let out a sound. It was a horrible, thin wail that just stopped, as if the air had been sucked out of her. My father just sat there, a hollowed-out man, a ghost in an expensive suit. I stood up. I picked up my purse. Grandpa stood up with me, placing his hand on the small of my back. We're leaving, I said. My parents didn't move. They were statues, trapped in the ruin they had built for themselves in that cold, gray room. We walked to the door. Daisy, my father whispered, his voice broken. He finally looked at me. His eyes were red and desperate. He was searching for his daughter. He was searching for the little girl who used to believe he was a hero. But his daughter wasn't there anymore. That girl had died on the side of a highway in the rain. Daisy, what are we supposed to do? He asked. Where are we supposed to go? I stopped at the door. I turned and looked back at him. I thought about all the times I had asked him that same question. I thought about the fear and the loneliness and the desperation I had felt. And I thought about the cold, hard answers he had always given me. I looked at him. I guess you'd better figure something out, I said, and I walked out of the room. I didn't look back. I walked out of that conference room and didn't stop. My legs felt like they were moving on their own. I didn't slow down until I was in the elevator, the doors sliding shut. Grandpa Arthur was right beside me. The moment the doors closed, a breath I had been holding for 28 years came out of me in a rush. I leaned my head against the cool metal wall. I didn't cry, I just breathed. It's over, Daisy, Grandpa said, his voice soft. It's over, I agreed. My own voice sounded strange, distant. Behind us, in the hallway, the conference room door opened. I heard Lily call my name, her voice frantic. Daisy, wait, please. Wait, I turned, holding the elevator door. She ran up to us, skidding to a stop. Her face was a wreck, red and swollen from crying. Her perfect makeup was smeared. She was still holding the copy of the audit, gripping it like it was the only real thing in the room. Daisy, she choked out, I had no idea. I swear to you, I swear on my life, I had no idea. I looked at her. My sister, the golden child, the one who had got everything. And for the first time, the jealousy and the resentment I had carried for her my whole life just evaporated. It was gone. I saw that she was a victim, too, in a different way. They had used her just as they had used me. They had used her as the reason, the excuse. They had burdened her with my stolen life. They had turned her into the person who lived off her sister's suffering. I know you didn't, Lily, I said. My voice was tired. So tired. They made sure of it. That's how they did it. If you had known, you would have been a problem just like me. My apartment, she whispered, horrified, looking down at the papers. My tuition, my art supplies, my whole life. It was all yours. It was, I said. There was no point in lying. There was no point in softness. There was only the truth now. What are you going to do? She asked. She was looking at me, but I knew she was also asking about our parents. Asking if she was now responsible for them. I'm going to live, I said. I'm going to live my life. The one I was supposed to have. She just nodded, fresh tears rolling down her face. I'm so sorry, Daisy. I'm so sorry. What do I do? That's up to you, Lily, I said. You have to choose your own life now. Just like me. It was the first real apology I had ever gotten from anyone in my family. Me too, Lily, I said. And I meant it. I was sorry for her. Sorry for the lies she had lived. Sorry for the horrible choice she now had to make, to stand by the parents who had lied to her or to walk away, alone. I got in the elevator with my grandfather. The doors closed, leaving her alone in the gray hallway. The next few weeks were a blur. The money appeared in a new bank account. The remaining $200,000 from the trust, plus another $500,000 that Grandpa Arthur and Mr. Harrison had managed to seize from their other investment accounts. They were, as my mother had screamed, ruined. The house was put up for sale by the bank. It was gone. I got one email from my mother. It was sent from a public library computer. It was 3 pages long. It was not an apology. It was pure, distilled hatred. It called me a cold, ungrateful monster. It said I had murdered my family. It said I would burn for what I had done. I read the email. I read every word. And then I deleted it. I created a filter to send any email from her, or my father, or any new account they might create directly to the trash. I blocked her number. I blocked my father's number. I blocked Lily's number, too. I needed total, complete silence. I quit my job. I gave my 2 weeks' notice. My boss was sad to see me go. He said I was his most reliable employee. I quit my second job. I sold my rusty car for $300 to a scrap yard. I packed 2 suitcases. I left my cheap furniture on the curb, and I moved. I bought a one-way ticket to Seattle. I had never been. It was as far away as I could get while still being in the same country. I didn't know anyone there. I had no history there. I bought a small condo. I paid cash. It wasn't a $3 million mansion. It was a small, one-bedroom place on a high floor with a big window that looked out at the water. It was quiet. It was safe. And it was all mine. I spent the first month just being. I woke up without an alarm clock. I had been woken up by alarms set for 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. for 10 years. The first time I woke up naturally, with the sun on my face, I cried. I made coffee and sat by my window. I watched the boats on the water. I bought a new car, a simple, safe, reliable one. I drove to the grocery store and I bought real food. Steak, fresh vegetables, good cheese. I learned how to cook. I had lived on instant noodles and peanut butter for a decade. The first real meal I cooked for myself felt like a miracle. I went for walks. I bought a real winter coat, one that was warm and waterproof. I read books. I slept. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't in a constant, thrumming state of panic. I wasn't worried about rent. I wasn't worried about my car breaking down. I wasn't struggling. I was just living. A few months later, Grandpa Arthur came to visit. He walked into my small, clean condo. He looked around. I had furniture. A real sofa. A comfortable bed. A painting of the ocean on the wall. He smiled. "This is nice, Daisy," he said. "This is very, very nice." I made him a cup of tea. We sat on my small balcony. It was a little cold, but the air was fresh. We didn't talk about my parents. We didn't talk about the money. We talked about the weather. We talked about a book I was reading. He told me a story about my grandmother, one I had never heard, about a time she had stood up to his father. She was a quiet one, he said, but she was steel all the way through. Just like you. When he was leaving, he stood at the door. He hugged me. It was a real hug, strong and solid. You look well, child, he said, his voice proud. You look at peace. I feel quiet, Grandpa, I told him. My mind, it's quiet. He nodded, his eyes shining. This is it. This is the life you always deserved. Your grandmother would be so proud. After he left, I stood by my window. I thought about my parents. I wondered where they were. I assumed they were living with Lily or in some small, cheap apartment. Ruined. I realized I didn't care. I didn't hate them. I didn't love them. I didn't wish them well. I didn't wish them ill. I just didn't think about them. They were a radio station I had finally turned off. The static was gone. They were waiting for me to call. They were waiting for me to feel guilty. They were waiting for me to come and save them, to be the good daughter again, to fix the mess they had made. But I was done. I found peace. I found it in the distance. I found it in the silence. I found it in the self-respect I had built with my own 2 hands, in my small, quiet apartment, watching the water. I no longer waited for apologies that would never come. I no longer waited for permission to be happy. I was finally, simply Daisy. I'm telling you my story, not because I want your pity. I've had enough of that to last a lifetime. I'm telling it because I spent 28 years of my life believing I was the problem. My own family, the people who were supposed to protect me, spent my entire life teaching me that my voice didn't matter. They spent every day, in 1,000 small ways, telling me I was worthless. They taught me that family meant being quiet. It meant swallowing your own pain so you didn't inconvenience anyone else. It meant shrinking yourself so someone else could be big. It meant setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. It took a 25-year audit of betrayal for me to learn the truth. The truth is, family is not an excuse for abuse. It is not a free pass for cruelty. It is not a justification for theft. Family is a word that is supposed to mean safety. It is supposed to mean protection. And the moment it stops meaning that, it is just a word. The people who hurt me, they had a whole vocabulary for me. They called me too sensitive. They called me dramatic. They called me weak. They said I was difficult. They said I had poor planning. I want you to listen to me. Those words, they are tools. They are weapons. They are the words abusers use to gaslight you. They are the words they use to make you feel crazy for reacting to the pain they are causing. They needed me to be the bad guy so they could feel like the good guys. They needed me to be the failure so they could feel like the success. They needed me to be the problem so they could keep stealing the solution. The hardest part of this whole journey wasn't the confrontation. It wasn't the lawyers or the bank statements. The hardest part was the 24 hours before the confrontation. It was sitting in my apartment, staring at the phone, as the texts from my mother and father and sister came pouring in, begging me, demanding I call them, telling me I was being manipulated by my grandfather. The hardest part was turning that phone off. It was the choice to betray the only family I had, in order to be loyal to the only person I had ever truly neglected, myself. My healing didn't start when the money hit my account. It started when I said no more. It started when I stopped shrinking. Rebuilding myself wasn't easy. It's still not easy. It's not a straight line. There are days when I check my bank account and I feel a jolt of panic, expecting it to be empty. There are days when I hear a phone ring and I flinch, expecting it to be my mother, somehow finding a new number to scream at me. There are days when I feel guilty for being happy. The scars are still there. The memories are still there. But the shame is gone. I finally gave the shame back to the people who earned it. My new life isn't loud. It's not about revenge or mansions or fancy cars. It's about silence. It's about respect. It's about being able to wake up in the morning and feel safe. It's about being able to eat a meal without worrying where the next one will come from. It's about being able to look in the mirror and not hate the person I see. I learned that boundaries are not an attack. They are an act of self-preservation. I learned that no is a complete sentence, and you never have to justify it. And I learned, in the hardest way possible, that you cannot wait for the people who broke you to be the ones to come and fix you. You have to save yourself. You have to be your own hero. So now I'm speaking directly to you, to the person out there who feels invisible, to the person who has been told they are too much or not enough. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after betrayal, even from the people who should have protected you, tell me where you're listening from. Tell me one thing you are doing today to choose yourself. Your boundaries matter. Your story matters. Your truth matters. Hit subscribe for more stories like this, because some truths deserve to be heard.